The Wind is My Mother, Bearheart, Molly Larkin, Chapter 11, Talking with the Earth. When I worked as a field representative for a private Indian college in Muskogee, I once accompanied our glee club to the performance in Chicago. There was a big turnout, and I was to speak during intermission while the choir was getting their second wind, or whatever they do during an intermission. While I was waiting in the wings, a little white boy burst into the backstage area and started looking in different doors. I said, "Hey, you looking for someone?" Yes. He'd been running and was out of breath. "I'm looking for the Indians." "Well, take a good look at me. I'm an Indian." He took one look at my suit and tie and said, "No, you're not an Indian. You're human." So I put him on my list, my prayer list. Let your every step be as a prayer. As a child, I loved to watch the B-class Western movies, and my favorite scene was when a wagon train would form a circle because they heard the Indian war whoop. I'd be eating popcorn or eating someone else's popcorn thinking, "Oh boy, here come those Redskins." They were all around the wagon trail, hollering and shooting arrows, and then the settlers would fire their rifles and 3 Indians would fall off their horses with one shot. They were very good shots in the movies. Then, all of a sudden, you'd hear the cavalry trumpet. Oh boy, help is coming. Early Westerns presented an image of Indians as bloodthirsty pagan savages, and in history we were looked on as wild, animalistic people. In actuality, we never knew we were wild until we started watching those movies and reading about ourselves. We had no concept of wild animals because we considered ourselves to be relatives of the four-leggeds. We didn't consider ourselves above or below nature. We considered ourselves a part of nature. Many people don't understand that we had a recognition of the Supreme Being long before the coming of the Europeans and the Bible. In observing the natural forces around us, we saw that different seasons would come and go at approximately the same time each year, and streams ran in certain directions. Today, we know that the sun is stationary and the earth revolves around the sun. But still, we say the sun comes up in the east, travels across the sky, and goes down in the west. If there was no great power controlling these things, why didn't the sun come up in the north one day and come up in the south the next? There was a pattern. There seemed to be a power controlling the forces of nature. A human being can blow on a blade of grass and make it sway back and forth, but this greater power caused the wind to blow and the great trees to move. We didn't spend 1 hour Sunday morning in a religious situation. We spent each day in acknowledgement that every day was a holy day, a sacred day. We have a song we sing in the morning that says, "I thank you for another day. I ask that you give me the strength to walk worthily this day, so that when I lie down at night, I will not be ashamed." It's a song that came to us long before the missionaries. When our people prayed, it wasn't just for themselves. The blessings would extend to those little children growing up and for those not even born yet. Our people looked ahead to the future with their prayers, and they considered all life forms as their relatives, even plants, trees, birds, and animals. When we walked on the grass of the plains and the fields, we viewed it as being there, as a carpet for us, and we respected it. Our people taught their children, let your every step be as a prayer. Thanksgiving. Before we were relocated to Indian Territory, our tribe consisted of 44 villages, which we referred to as towns. Today we have 14 towns still carrying on our tribal ceremonies, and each town has a town chief and a town medicine man, as well as 2 delegates who represent that town at the main tribal council. There are 4 ceremonial dances held every year in each of those towns, and when I was a child, my father took me to them. Long before the missionaries came to this continent, my tribe had a ceremony to give thanks for the year's blessing. It was the first dance of the year, our New Year's celebration, held when the earth puts on a new coat of green, new grass, leaves, and flowers. The second dance is for ailing people or soldiers returning from a battle where blood has been shed. The third dance is a time of renewing the arbor of the dance ground. The past year's willow branches that covered the arbor are burnt and fresh willows put up to replace the old ones. This is to make way for the 4th and main dance of the year, which is called Buskita Thako, the Great Fast. Every year when the corn is just beginning to ripen, the first dance is held to say thank you for another year of allowing corn to grow to sustain our people. We call it the Green Corn Dance, and it is our Thanksgiving celebration, a time of gratitude, and is still held today with some minor variations. In the old days, we started a fire by rubbing sticks together, and those who were in camp came and took some coals to build their own campfires so that the people were all connected through the communal coals. On the 4th day of our encampment, everyone fasted for an evening and a day. Then that night we had a dance. The chief of that particular town sat on the west side of the dance area with the town medicine man right behind him. His spokesman, referred to as Henaha, sat on the chief's left. The Henaha was very eloquent and probably of the Wind clan because they are the orators of our tribe. When the chief wanted something to be announced, the Henaha would convey the message to their chief, to all the people, and when he was through, everyone acknowledged his talk by saying, "Ho." You could hear that word all around the encampment. In the afternoon of the 4th day of the dance, the Henaha made an announcement. We have now come to the time where all of us must be quiet, so please control your children. No loud talking or laughing. This is our quiet hour. The medicine man would then get up and stand there a long time, communicating with the Great Spirit, saying that he has tried his best to take care of what has been entrusted to him for the good of the people, and that he is grateful that he came upon this knowledge so that people could feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally. We didn't know too much about spirituality. That was the closest thing we had to church. It was out there in the wilds where nature was all around. It seemed that even the birds knew to be quiet. Way off in the distance, you might hear a bird, but in that immediate area, everything was quiet. We were in tune with all of life. Then the people would dance all night. But when we danced, we weren't just saying, "Hey, let's get up and party." You see, dancing was our way of saying thank you to the Great Spirit. It was a ceremony. The dance area was sprinkled with medicine and was sacred, so before we could dance, we would sweat, bathe, and fast so as to be clean inside and out in order to perform before the Great Being. The ashes from the previous year were scattered all over the ceremonial grounds, somewhat like the story of the great flood as told in the Bible. It was a renewal. Everything burned, everything's gone. Now it's time to make new tracks and give thanks for being blessed another year. All of these elements were brought in, but still our dancing and ceremonies did not set well with the missionaries. They called it pagan. Yet, it's my belief that, however we make contact with the Creator, is of meaning in his eyes. Offerings. All Native American ceremonies reflect our respect for the earth. It's part of our daily way of life, even today in our respect for the land. If Native people are going to take something from it, be it herbs or stone or earth itself, we always give an offering, usually tobacco, in return. Then we gently take that herb or stone, because this is the face of our Mother Earth that we're marring, and we pray that we will use it in a good manner. All tribes have their own way of giving thanks to our Mother Earth for the things that she gives to us. Everything we use in life comes from the earth, even the ingredients for the medicine that heals us when we're sick and injured. When we give thanks, it's not just to the earth and plant life. We're going beyond that to the great power who makes all things possible. That's who we're really addressing and acknowledging, the Creator, and all that He has provided for us. That's how Native people show their respect for the earth. But when the earth and her resources are used without giving an offering in return, then we're faced with natural disasters and death and damage that follow. I'm not saying earthquakes, hurricanes, and floods are caused by humans' interference and lack of respect, but I do believe that if we pay proper respect to the earth, perhaps when earthquakes do occur, there might not be so much destruction. Maybe the earthquake would happen somewhere else where there were fewer buildings to fall, or where the population was not so dense. I was out in San Francisco a week after a big earthquake of 1990, and I told people there that the earthquake itself did no harm. How many people go to bed and stay in the same position all night without moving? Sometimes you turn to the left, turn to the right, and roll over. Our mother's been in the same position for many years, so she shifts. But the shifting itself does not hurt anyone. Only the man-made things hurt us. Slabs of concrete, collapsed highways, broken water mains, and gas lines. Many people were hurt on San Francisco Nimitz Highway when the earthquake came. In the building of the highway, I just can't picture an engineer giving an offering to this Mother Earth and saying to her, "I've been commissioned to build a structure on your face here. We're going to use it in a good way to help people get to work and to their homes. I offer just this little token of respect to you for the privilege of building it." That's the way my people were taught to do things. That's our way of communicating with the earth. I don't see an engineer doing that when he's got so many dollar signs luring him to sign his name on the dotted line. I can't see an engineer or commissioner of highways even think about giving an offering. Multiply that situation all over the world. Where is that respect? Where is that acknowledgement? My people were told a long time ago, the rivers and streams are the veins of the universe. They're your lifeline. Take care of them. Today it's hard to find good, clean water anymore. We've been very poor stewards to all that was given to us in its pure form. Instead, we have become exploiters and abusers of the very thing that sustains our lives, and we think we have nothing to learn from the world around us. Learning from our relatives. In this scientific world of ours, we are continually making technological advances, yet there are still things we could learn from our environment, even as our old people learned from observing animals. Many yoga exercises were developed for the observation of animals. Watch a cat lying in front of a fire. It can be sound asleep, then all of a sudden it stretches, and you can see the muscles rippling all through its body, toning up stored energy so that at a moment's notice the cat can be on its forelegs ready to jump. No matter what kind of work you do, sometime during the day, take time to just stretch, and after stretching, see how good it feels to relax again. The bear happens to be my father because my dad was of the bear clan. There are different types of bears. The black bear can climb trees easily. Grizzlies are too heavy to climb trees, but very strong, and their intelligence is amazing. They can almost read your mind. A bear can come into camp, then waddle off just a few steps and it's gone. Where did it go? It's almost as though it knows how to become invisible. As a rule, bears that live in the forest, as big and clumsy as they look, are as gentle as they are strong. They can run through the forest and not break one twig. Many bears have many qualities we can learn from. The companies that make solar panels, for example, are now studying the fur of the polar bear because it's the best example of solar heating there is. Although the polar bear appears white to us, its skin and fur are actually colorless. There's no pigmentation in a polar bear's fur, so when it's hit by sunlight, it appears white. Every hair is a hollow tube that retains the heat of the sun. That's why the polar bear is able to survive in sub-zero weather. It has solar heating system in its fur. So when we think we have reached the end of our knowledge in some particular field, something like this always comes up. So it stands to reason that there is much yet to be learned from nature. The polar bear seems to understand that it must appear white to go unnoticed in the snow. When it hunts game and gets close to its prey, it will lie motionless, squinting, and using its front paws to cover its nose and mouth because they're the only black spots on it. Bears have their own system of communication. Mostly, they use telepathy to communicate, but in emergency, they have guttural sounds that they make to get attention, similar to our yelling, "Hey, hey, everybody, look, look," to bring attention to an urgent situation. By nature, bears are very playful, even when they're hunting or fishing. When they fish, they're not fishing to make a living. They fish in order to live, and in doing so, make a game out of it for enjoyment. This is something humans can learn from. Even though you need to work to survive, don't let yourself get into a rut. After a weekend, Monday comes around real quick, and you're driving yourself with everything you've got in order to get to your place of employment, just dragging yourself there. Somehow you lost the joy and appreciation of working when there are so many others who can't even find work. Where's your gratitude? So if you have a job and the job has become a rut, think of it not as an end in itself, but as a springboard to something else that will come to you. For the time being, make the most of it. Work on your attitude. Find the joy. Just as bears make a game of fishing, try to catch a fish in a clear stream. They fish with their paws and make it a joyful experience. There is much more that we can learn from bears. They travel long distances looking for honey and berries. When a bear goes into a new territory looking for food, it looks to a prominent tree, one where the local bear has made its mark by standing up on its hind legs, reaching as far as it could to put its claw marks on that tree. The newcomer will stand on its hind feet to see how it measures up to that mark. If its mark is a little higher, then the local bear will have a problem. It will know that it's up against the bigger bear. Without fighting, it'll know it has to look for another area. So why do humans feel that they have to fight over their differences? Even the animals have a way of resolving competition without confrontation. All animals have their own system of communication, whether we understand it or not. The dolphins have a system of communication, as do seals, even birds and trees. It has been proven scientifically that trees communicate with one another, even as far as 50 yards apart. If there's a damaging bug on one tree, that tree sends a message to neighbor trees that when the bug arrives, a bitter substance has already been secreted into the leaves to discourage that bug from getting on it. There is such a close relationship among trees that when one dies, the neighboring trees often die. There's a chain reaction. Communication of the earth's creatures is all around us. Honeybees send out scouts to look for food. When the scout locates food, it comes back to the hive and does a particular dance. After that dance, the rest of the bees come out of the hive and fly to that exact spot where the food was found. Researchers have monitored the scouts as they located the food, and while the scout was returning to the hive, the researchers took the food and put it closer to the hive, but the bees flew over the food to the exact spot where it had been first found. So it's not a sense of smell that leads him to the food, it's the communication of the scout. The coyote is a survivor. It's almost impossible to eradicate coyotes. People can poison other animals, but they've been unable to poison the coyotes. Somehow they sense not to eat anything with poison in it. In Phoenix, Arizona, housing is spreading out northward from the city, and the people complain about the coyotes are invading their property. But it's the other way around. The people are invading the coyotes' land. That's where they've lived for centuries, and we're pushing them aside. But the coyote survives. We don't know how they live and make it in this day and age, but they do. Keeping the land sacred. Los Angeles is called the land of sunshine, but it's been a long time since I've seen a clear sky in the California area. What happened? It's a man-made things we put on this planet that dim our view of the actual beauty that exists. How does the ozone layer affect us? The hole in the ozone layer affects a one-cell organism that grows in northern waters. When it begins to die out, that death breeds other deaths, including plant life that feeds the fish, on up to the whale. They will be gone in time. Everything on the earth is interdependent. If our knowledge was represented by the radius of a circle, as we increase our knowledge, the circle becomes larger. What's beyond that circle is the unknown, so that the more we know, there is more that is unknown. And it goes on like in that way. We're on the way to destroying ourselves. There's a great sand dune in Colorado and parts of Kansas and Nebraska that's growing, and with our technology, we don't know how to stop it. 10,000 pounds of junk mail are sent out every year. If 100,000 people refuse junk mail, 150,000 trees would be saved. Trees hold the soil together, and now their numbers are dwindling. When I was a boy, we had no refrigeration out in the country, so we hung our water bucket on a tree limb with a gourd dipper in it. Even today, you can purify a bucket of water by hanging it in a tree for a day with a cheesecloth over it to keep debris from falling in. You can take the water to any lab and have it tested. There will be no bacteria in it. Something about the tree purifies it. Most of my tribe always hung their water buckets on tree limbs outside. They might not have known exactly what it did, but they knew that it helped. So often money distorts values. The Black Hills of South Dakota contain minerals that have great monetary value. Mining companies want to mine there, yet the Lakota elders view the mountain as sacred, just as the Vatican is a sacred place for all Catholic people. Many great leaders went to the Black Hills and fasted on vision quests. It's sacred land, and the elders want it to remain that way. The Black Hills were claimed by the United States government over 100 years ago, but the courts recently ruled that no compensation was ever given to the Indian people for the taking of the Black Hills. So until compensation is given, the United States has no legal claim to it. The government now wants to reimburse the Lakota for the Black Hills, so we'll have valid ownership and can then turn around and sell or lease the land to the mining companies. The elders don't want compensation. They want the land returned. It's still unresolved today. Can you imagine tearing down the Vatican to mine for uranium? Yet that's what the mining companies are asking when they want to buy the Black Hills. Many Eskimos were paid money for the right to run the pipeline over their property, and overnight they became rich. They were told, "This money is going to help you." Yet some of the Alaskan Indians did not know how to use that money, and as a result, many of the Indians who were suddenly rich became alcoholics and lost sight of their traditional teachings and talents. Money is not the answer to everything. We were always told to respect the land. Each blade of grass, every leaf, even one pine needle is trying to filter out some of the pollution that we cause. All of these things help make air breathable and life more comfortable for us. Yet modern society seems to go along without much regard for them. It's nice to have air conditioning. It's nice to have a refrigerator. But when Freon escapes, it adds to the problem with the ozone layer. We don't see far enough ahead. We have scientific knowledge, but not the wisdom to guide that knowledge. As a result, we have what happened at 3 Mile Island. We had the knowledge to contain the great power within those walls until radiation leaked. We didn't have the foresight to consider what to do in the event of leakage, and the land is still contaminated today. We have much to learn from the nature if we would open our minds. We need to get in touch with our universe, to get in touch with the meaning of all that surrounds us. Until we get back in touch and in tune with nature, we're destroying ourselves. I took a trip to Alaska not too long ago to speak primarily to the missionaries. They were telling the natives that practicing their traditional ways was a devil's work and that they would go to hell if they continued. I had a lot of fun with the missionaries. I told them that most natives didn't know anything about hell until the missionaries came, yet the missionaries seemed to know all about it. It sometimes makes me wonder if it's because that's where they came from. I encouraged the natives to talk about some of the knowledge that they had before they got all mixed up by the civilization. The natives said, "Progress has finally hit our island. We're educated. Do you see any igloos? No, we have bungalows. They're not properly insulated, and we get pneumonia every year, but we're educated. We don't have dog teams pulling our sleds around anymore. If you got caught in a blizzard and you had your dogs, a good lead dog could always find the way home. And if things went from bad to worse, you could always circle your dogs around you and sleep in the middle to keep warm. You can't do that with a snowmobile, but at least we're educated." Another sign of progress can be found among the Osage people. When a tribal member died after performing a ceremony, they would put the deceased in a sitting position and pile rocks right up to the head. That way, the deceased could be seen by the Great Spirit and not be lost in the ground. The sitting position is also like that of a fetus about to be born. It facilitates the deceased being reborn into the spirit world. Many years ago, when the Osage didn't know anything about diabetic comas, it appeared that one of the elders had died, so they buried him in the traditional way. Apparently, he came out of that coma by himself, because that evening he came home looking very pale. It seems strange, but his family didn't say anything other than to welcome him home. A few days later, he seemingly died again, so they went through the ceremony a second time, put it back in the sitting position, and piled up the rocks. Same way that evening, he came home. Sometime later, someone asked his family, "Did he finally die?" "We don't know, but the last time he pulled that trick, we buried him the white man's way, and he hasn't come back yet." So I guess that's a sign of progress. We've miscommunicated with our environment for a long time, not knowing its language. We've complicated things with our great intelligence. We've created all this pollution, the hole in the ozone layer, and the greenhouse effect, because we're so smart. Now it's time to get back to basics. The 4 directions. There are still ways we can communicate with our environment and receive help. Passing on my training in the use of herbs and chants would not be of value to you because the kind of herbs I use may not grow where you live, and the songs cannot be learned from a book. But there are traditional teachings that you can use, things that we all have in common. First of all, we're human beings. We also have the sunlight, the directions, and the earth and sky. We make use of all these natural elements in the art of healing. We are told that at night, when all is dark, it's difficult to walk through the forest. We might trip and fall, step off a cliff, or hurt ourselves in some other way. But when the sun comes up, we can see where we're going. So the sun represents knowledge, and this is why we call east the direction of enlightenment. If you have a problem that you have no answer for, you can face east and think about it, and an answer will come to you. What is actually happening? There are two planes of the mind. One is the conscious awareness, and right below that is your unconscious. The unconscious is a storehouse of every bit of knowledge that you've ever received from the time of your birth, and it relays answers to your problems in your conscious awareness. So actually, what you're doing by facing east is tapping into that unconscious knowledge so that you might know where to take that next step. You can turn to the south if you have lost someone who's very close to you, a relative or a friend. South stands for the destiny of all mankind. In my tribe, it is said that we come from that direction when we are born. We come into this life on the red road, and we walk the 4 quadrants of the universe. When it comes time for us to cross over to the spirit world, we take the blue road to go out. Blue represents spirit. There's also a red and blue mentioned in the book of Revelations. It says that in our last days, the sun will turn blue and the moon will turn red. When we get that blue road, there's a white bird that looks after us and keeps our way clear so we won't stumble. And the wind people come along and push the soul across into the next world so that the deceased will not be roaming around but can find rest and peace. That's been our teaching. Maybe you know someone who has passed on and you could never resolve it in your heart. It still bothers you. You want to make a clear path so that the person's spirit will go on and you feel good about going on with your life also. If you've lost a loved one and spend a lot of time on that loss, face south and ask for help to keep going on in life. West is the direction of gratitude. When the sun goes down in the west, it is benediction of another day. At the end of each day, stand facing west and say, thank you for all the things that happened today, the good as well as the bad. Why be grateful for the bad? Because there was a lesson in it. Try to find that lesson and grow from it. If you let difficulties bother you all the time, you're building a wall around yourself. Happiness is on the other side, and the inside is misery. Sometimes you get to crying. You cry and cry and cry. If you're going to cry, cry for something. Don't just cry for crying. If your tears are coming out, if you have nothing else in mind, then think about this. You are cleaning your eyes so that you can see the truth a little better, so that you can see beauty. You can see something of a positive nature. Go ahead and clean your eyes out, then dry them and go on with your life. We learn from tragedy. We don't always know how much we value something or someone until they're gone. We look to the north for emotional, physical, and mental health. We may have a loved one who's ill, or perhaps we're sick and we want to get well. Lay down on this Mother Earth with your navel toward her and your head to the north. We can still receive healing energy from this earth. People talk about healing Mother Earth, but there's no one powerful enough on this planet to heal Mother Earth. We can help to preserve and replenish some of the good things on earth, but to heal her, that's something else. She continues to heal us and give us energy. You may have heard of the great warrior Crazy Horse. His Indian name was actually Prancing Horse, but the closest English equivalent was acting like crazy. So their translation came out as crazy horse. He used to stand barefoot on Mother Earth for hours at a time and get his energy going. If you're in a 3 or 4 story building, it'll take a little longer for the energy to rise up, but in time, it'll reach you. It's still Mother Earth because Mother Earth gave us this wood, these bricks, and this concrete. Everything that we have, what we live in, what we wear, eat, and drive came from the earth, and we can still get energy from her. So lie there with your head toward the north. In the north sits the bald eagle, whose head is white like the snow. The white of snow represents purity, and when snow comes, we say it covers your path. If you have had difficulties in your life, all that's covered up, you begin to feel good and sound again, and you can make new tracks.